and you think the sights are impressive, wait till you try the food.
There we go. My name's Steve Smith. For 25 years, I've been teaching Rick the art of French living while he taught me the science of guidebook writing. Today, I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you very much for coming. Whether you're here in person or virtually online, bienvenue, welcome. Today, I get to talk about France and introduce you to some of my favorite French people who work with me and have for quite a while. I mentioned before, my history with Rick is primarily between writing guidebooks and educating, hiring, and training our guides. We're excited this week because we've invited them out to help us figure out how to do our work better, how to lead our tours better, what can we do better. There are about 120 of them out this week, of which about 10 of them are from France. And we lead tours. Today I get to talk to you about why you should consider going to France. It's not really why you should go to France, but it's which tour you should take. Pardon me. And here's our country in the middle, the central part of Europe. We have about 5 different tours that crisscross the country of France. Why go to France? Why should you be considering this for many trips of yours? It's about, first, number one, diversity. Quality and diversity. From Paris, the massive city in the northwest of the country, to the sunny Nice, capital of the southeastern part of France, there's more variety in this country than any other country I've found in Europe. In the north, you can expect to pastoral scenes like this, Charlet cattle standing in front of Romanesque or Gothic churches in the middle of nowhere with wildflowers throughout the months of May and June and into July. It's very pastoral in the north. The south cuts quite a different picture. Stone-cut villages, 300 days of sunshine a year, good winds, and fields of lavender or sunflowers, depending on the time of year you're there. North to south, astonishing variety. And if it's coastlines you like, France has 2 distinctly different ones, the Atlantic to the west. They're sort of Olympic Peninsula if you're from the northwest here. The rugged coast of Normandy and Brittany, and in the southern part of the country, the Mediterranean with its sun-baked villages, like Colmar that you're looking at. And if you must see face to face the highest points in Europe, highest peaks, it's France where you must go, not Switzerland. And stand point blank looking at Mont Blanc, 1,000 feet taller there on our own Mount Rainier. There are 3 distinctly different mountain ranges, though, in France. Those were the Alps I just showed you, of course, bordering Switzerland and Italy. On the eastern edge of France, to the western, south, and southern part of the country, the Pyrenees form the border with Spain and Iberia, right? But many people don't know and hide Cathar castles like the one that you're looking at here in the Languedoc area. The central part of the southern country of France region is formed by the Massif Central mountain range, lesser known, with canyons like the Ardèche Gorge and the Gorge de Verdun that you're looking at here that crisscross through the country and are popular places for kayakers, rock climbers, and any sort of adventurist. This scenic diversity, reminds me, has created over the millennia a cultural diversity that's not matched anywhere else in Europe. So it's not just pretty to look at, it's also pretty to visit the people and the culture. For one day, you could be sitting here next to these Alsatian people, guzzling liters of beer, eating sauerkraut and sausages in the Alsace part of France, on the northeastern corner. And the next day, you could head over to Brittany in the very northwestern corner and find kids that look more Irish than they do French, freckled and red-haired, and eat the popular dish, which is crepes, that you'll find on the menu. You won't find any sauerkraut in Brittany. It's about diversity. Another day you could be in the southwestern corner that borders on Spain, where the people look and sound and feel more Spanish maybe than French. And paella, as they say in French, is on the menu most days of the week here. To the southeastern corner of the country, the devil-may-care Italian influence permeates. Trains don't run on schedule. Who cares, right? But fresh pasta is available in this part of France because it was Italian until the mid-1800s, right, in the Riviera Côte d'Azur region. But France is more than just a beautiful place to sip a great bottle of wine and eat a great piece of cheese. In many ways, France is a yardstick of human achievement. For here travelers can trace the whole of European civilization, from prehistoric cave paintings, brilliant ones like this, to Roman ruins that rival anything Italy has. In the Middle Ages, you'll find castles, walled cities that show off the Middle Ages in France so well. And during that time, it was in France that the concepts and the architectural styles of Romanesque and in particular Gothic architecture were born. Gothic architecture, the French were the ones to pull this church higher, create space to fill with stained glass windows like this, to tell stories of the Bible to people, to the masses who were not literate, to read their Bibles, right? It all was here, all these things, born and bred right here in France. In the 16 and 1700s, French architects set the scene throughout Europe and the trends with their innovative designs. And it was the chateau like this of Vaux-le-Vicomte, just outside of Paris and in the Loire Valley, and of course the Chateau of Versailles, that announced France's emergence as Europe's first greatest superpower, economic superpower. In the 1800s, France gave birth to the form of art called Impressionism, right? And you can visit its home base, its crib here in Giverny, where Claude Monet lived and painted for the last 40 years of his life, and then after being inspired just as he was from the lovely gardens and sublime countryside. You can go to Paris or other nearby museums and see the product of these artists' work, who were inspired by the countryside in France. Pretty great stuff. France hasn't given up today. It's on the cutting edge of modern architecture and modern art. Throughout the country, you'll find museums showcasing some of the greatest modern artists, whether it's Pablo Picasso, Marc Chagall, Verdun Léger, modern art museums scattered throughout the country, keeping current with artistic trends today in France. For a lot of people, to see all of this and understand it and take it in is quite a task. And they decide they would like to share their trip, and maybe a bottle of wine or two, with other travelers, maybe 24 other travelers. For them, we have some options for you to talk to you about today. We have 5 different tours. It takes us 5 different tours plus a Basque tour that starts in the very southwestern corner of this country to show you how beautiful the country is and to explain it as well as we can. The strength of our tours, by the way, I want to say, is the guides who lead them. Whether it's Sabine orienting you well to the site of Les Baux or Arnaud giving you a good historic lesson of Notre Dame Cathedral. Our guides they're charged with getting you well-oriented, teaching you how to travel, and giving you great history lessons, and then working well with local guides like Elwood here on the D-Day beaches, specialists who can bring to life history of very important parts of Europe. So our guides are kind of like the weavers of a lot of stories of local guides, and they paint the big picture for you and give you a lot of the original history themselves. We like to have fun. Our tours are a combination of learning and fun. Traveling with a group of 25 other people, you create your own fun, which is lovely. I mentioned before in a talk I gave this morning, I used to be very proud of the tours I led. It was great. And I thought I just really gave that Renaissance talk the best thing I could. And at the end of the tour, I was really pleased, and then I was a little bit distressed and humbled to find out that the favorite part of the tour, almost always with our tour members, were the other people they met on the tour. Not the talks I gave or how funny I was or whatever. That is because it's due to the fact that Rick has such a particular philosophy that draws people like you, people who are open-minded, I don't care what political party you're from, people who want to experience France and give the French the benefit of the doubt before they judge them. How nice is that? We also like to give you free time on tour, to not just be surrounded by a group, but also to make your own discoveries. Who doesn't want to be in front of Claude Monet's water lilies in the orangerie with a room to yourself? Of course, we want to make that happen. The hotels we use are the same hotels I write in the guidebooks that I research with Rick. In our guidebooks, whether it's in Paris and rooms that are cozy, smaller in Paris than they are in the countryside. We like to eat well in France. You'll use a lot of the restaurants you see in our guidebooks. We like to do picnics. We like to feature the French cuisine. There's something like 400 different kinds of cheese in France. And we're determined that you're going to sample every one of them. And the only way we can do that is through picnics like this, right? And buying 20 kinds of cheeses each time. Dinners are a big event. They're important to us. If I'm taking you to France on a tour, I want you to have the best example I can find. And one of the reasons of cuisine One of the reasons our guides are out here, one thing they debate eternally, particularly on the France tours, is the best restaurant to take groups to. And they don't always agree, so Patrick chooses his and Virginie chooses her favorite restaurant, and we love that at Europe to the Back Door, Rick Steves. We love it when our guides choose their own places, and we want you to leave with a wonderful sense of the French cuisine, and then be free on every other night to make your own discovery. You have the guidebook to travel with. Places that Rick and I love to suggest that you eat out with your own view by yourself. What a great combination is that? Group travel and independent time as well. Always with a consultant, your guide along to help you out. Bus drivers become our friends. The bus is our friend. We have 25 people on the average tour in a 50-seat bus, 48-seat bus. The drivers become friends, lifelong friends. We have 12 of them out today this week for the reunion who've chosen to pay their own fares to come to Seattle, Edmonds, to join us at the parties today. By the way, it's just remarkable. But in the end, c'est qui ça? And in the end, the reason you'll come back on tours with us is because of your guide. And I'd like to introduce you now to two of my favorite guides. One old-timer, guess who he is, and one new one, Patrick Vidal.
Bonjour.
And Virginie Moore.
Bonjour.
So yeah, now don't get fooled by the pictures. I'm not trying to confuse people all the time like that. That's not too bad. I've been working with Steve and Rick obviously for 17 years now. Hence the little bit of white in the beard. So that shows a little bit. And it's been 17 marvelous years of a lot of people to meet. I see some faces in the assistants which I know very well. And I hope eventually I will meet you all on some French tours around there. So welcome to France.
Bonjour, je suis Virginie Moret et je suis française. My name is Virginie Moret. I'm from France. Je suis de Bretagne. I come actually from Brittany, the northwest corner of France. And I've done my first full season guiding for Rick Steves. I used to be a teacher in the US, 10 years in your beautiful country. And I decided that the best thing for me to do when I moved out of the US was to keep the connection with America by being a teacher, but no longer in a classroom, a regular classroom, but in the best classroom of the world, which for me are the French streets. I had a blast this year, and I will have many years of a blast in France guiding for Rick Steves.
They're going to help me narrate these tours that we have. What we, the three of us, have a chance to do with you right now is to, because we have 5 tours to talk about, we can't go into great depth. But we can give you a flavor for these different tours, and they follow the difference in the variety of the country that we're traveling to. So here's a taste of the tours that we offer of France. Paris, in the heart of France in 11 days. Un instant. Starts in Paris. Tu vas voir, ça va montrer bientôt. And we start Paris. We have 2 tours that in the France part of our tours that feature Paris. There's a 7-day tour of Paris that Michael Ann spoke to very well this morning on the first talk, and I'll refer to a little bit here so you have an idea of it. The Paris in the Heart of France tour, though, starts with 3 nights in Paris and ends with 1 night after doing a loop through a part of the world that Virginie will describe to us. Paris is great. I've lived here on several occasions. Many of our guides have. And one thing that strikes me about Paris is it's great year-round. Any month, I think, is worth going to. The colder the weather, the fewer the people. The fewer the people, the more genuine the experience and the cozier the cafes are. And the Louvre doesn't matter if it's, or the Orsay, snowing outside, or if it's 80 degrees, does it? In the summertime, Paris is alive with festivals, and like the Plage de l'Été on the river, the Seine River. We'll teach you on the tour how to use public transit. You'll get on the city tour of Paris that's a week long, you'll get a metro pass that works for the buses as well. And on the other tours that we do through Paris, you'll have metro tickets to use. Is that right? I have that right? You'll get a museum pass no matter what tour you do with us. The 6-day pass, is it? With the Paris tour. I'm glad you guys are there. And I think it's a 2-day pass with our Paris and Heart of France tour.
Price of Heart of France is 2 days, yeah. Where we
2 days.
Yeah,
good.
we go to the Louvre, we go to Orsay, and we got plenty of time to do plenty of other places.
The great thing about these passes is you can go into any site. There's so many hundreds of sites covered with the passes for just 5 or 10 minutes if you want to. We'll cover the most important sites with you. Patrick or Virginie or our guide will take you through the site, the museum. Then you're free to go to the smaller museums that you've heard of. But maybe we shouldn't guide you through, but you should be on your own to visit. We'll take you on a day walk through historic Paris and start where the city did, on the Ile de la Cité, featuring Notre Dame Cathedral. You'll get a good background on this. How long did it, 200-year process of building this cathedral?
180.
Yeah, cutting. Okay, 180.
Close enough? Close enough, that was good.
I never thought of the French as precise before, but I guess they're good. Next door, we'll take you through the success or the high point of Gothic architecture. If the objective of Gothic architecture is to stretch the church taller, to fill the walls with stained glass, there's no better example than the Sainte-Chapelle. I think one of my favorite moments is when people walk up to this chapel the first time and you look at their eyes. And the nice thing about the museum pass, by the way, is you can go back into the chapel any number of times you want. It's not a free church to enter. It's 8 or 9 euros, I think. And with your pass, you can go back time and again to see the sun at different angles during the day. Then we'll cross over to the left. Whoops. Then we'll cross over to the, there we go. Isn't that? Yes, to the left bank. So I'm standing on Notre Dame Cathedral, and you'll have a walking tour through the Latin Quarter, the historic, one of the older quarters in Paris, past some of the American memories like Shakespeare and Company, where Scott Fitzgerald or Ernest Hemingway and Sylvia Beach used to hang their berets when they lived there. You'll have time to relax, too, on our Paris tour and the Paris and Heart of France tour, like in the Luxembourg Garden at the end of the day. Again, we like to leave you with enough free time to enjoy each day and then get back to show you what these sites look like at night. It's great to see Notre Dame in the daytime, but going back at night adds another dimension that's unbelievable to this church.
Walking in Paris is a big thing. I mean, it's a big town, it's got the metro transportation, but you can walk everywhere. And at night, you can see all the lights around, as we saw the slide before, and it's a great thing to be walking around and enjoying the town like that.
Good. Next day, we'll see the Louvre. We'll tackle the great Louvre Museum with a local guide, not with one of our guides, but with a local guide, and we'll give you a tour. Do we break up into 2 small groups, or yes, we divide into 2 groups?
2 groups, yeah.
Of 12 people each, 14 people per group. That's personal. We divide so we can get a better tour of the Louvre and make it come alive to you better. We'll see the classics of the Louvre, from Winged Victory to Venus de Milo to Mona Lisa. A lot of women in the Louvre Museum. And powerful, great museum of fine arts. And you'll have time again with your museum pass to go back again. The nice thing about this museum is it's open Wednesday and Fridays until 9:30. So you can go back at night and see it gloriously quieter at night. In the afternoon of that day, maybe you'll go up to the top of the Champs-Élysées and tour the Arc de Triomphe. Climb up the 432 steps and look down with your museum pass in your pocket, because you're on your own now, free to you, and you get to go to the front of the line because you have this pass that we gave you, and look down the Champs-Élysées back toward the Louvre, stop and pay more at a cafe for an espresso than you ought to. Maybe it's $10 for a shot of espresso, but remember, please, he or she who comes home with the most money doesn't win. He or she who comes home with the most experiences wins, and that's one of the best $10 I think you can spend, because the waiter doesn't give you your bill until you ask for it. So bring all your postcards and spend 2 hours if you want to. Then it's only $5 an hour for that coffee, right? And another day we'll see the Orsay Museum, and we'll tour the masterpieces of Impressionism, right? Later on this tour, we get to go to its birthplace. We're doing a little bit in reverse by seeing the paintings first, but that's okay. From Manet to Monet to Cézanne and far beyond, the Orsay Museum is one you want to be left alone in largely. We'll do a good orientation, you'll understand the background, but I don't need you to tell me, guide, about Claude Monet. I want to just go enjoy this art, right? Then you'll have time to see the museum dedicated to the sculptor who did for sculpture what Claude Monet did for painted art, the Rodin Museum, and the Thinker and Well Beyond, about a 10-minute walk from the Orsay Museum. Again, on your free time with that museum pass. Everybody has time to visit the Eiffel Tower. You should make reservations before you go. You'll get that information from us. Are people reserving mostly?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. Yeah, it's important, because if you don't reserve, and depending on time of the year you get there, you can't go up. I mean, the lines are unbelievable. So booking in advance is good.
But you can also go on top of the Arc de Triomphe and at the view with the Eiffel Tower in it.
By the way, the Arc de Triomphe is the Arc of Triumph. Just kidding you, Virginie. That was,
Sorry.
Her accent's not bad, is it? All right. My favorite time of day to go, I don't know about you guys, but is the end of the day while there's still some light left, and stay up on the tower. Go up to the 2nd floor. You don't need to go to the top. You can if you want to, but the view's almost too tall, and then see it as the lights come on. As the sun sets and the lights come on, then you come down and see it floodlit at night. It's wonderful. The Paris tour adds to all those sites and that sightseeing a walking tour of Montmartre, where the Impressionist artists, those rebels, gathered before in their early stages. You'll see the old neighborhoods and the haunts of Toulouse-Lautrec, Vincent van Gogh, Auguste Renoir, and on and on. This tour, the Paris City Tour, then goes to the Orsay Museum. So you see where they hung out, and then you see the museum you see. You'll also have a tour of the Marais district, the Jewish quarter, the center of the Jewish quarter in Paris, and also at the location of its greatest square, the Place des Vosges, with a local guide that we love and whom I list in the book. You'll have time to see the greatest military museum, maybe in Europe, certainly in France, Invalides, where under that gold dome, Napoleon lies powerfully dead. The greatest general in French history, maybe, maybe not. Do you go there on your tours? And people do this on free time, I imagine.
Oh, it's on the free time, yeah. We'll leave them go.
It's not far from the Orsay Museum. On the Paris tour as well, you can visit we'll take you out and we'll give you a guided tour of Versailles, the house, the hunting lodge that Louis XIV expanded. Right? You'll see the Hall of Mirrors, and we'll try to find the quietest time of day we can with a local guide. And then also on the Paris tour, you have a whole week. So you can do all those things that we're usually done about 2 o'clock on a Paris tour. Is there an average?
Yes, but it's around that, yeah, 2 o'clock.
And then you have afternoons to hang out at the cafes, go to the opera. The Paris Opera is one of the most beautiful in the world. To do night events, because you're not so exhausted, because you don't have to get up maybe the next day so early, because you have more time in the city, right? All right, Virginie, where are we going from here?
So from Paris, we leave busy, busy Paris, and we go back to time. We go back in time by going to the medieval castle in the process of being built of Guédelon, that's the northwest of Burgundy, before going to Bourges, lovely city of Bourges. And then we enter the Loire Valley, and we stay in Amboise, before we go to our favorite part, Brittany.
I should have known.
We get to enter the Celtic part of France, and we explore the Mont St Michel before we go to Normandy and spend time on the D-Day beaches. And then on our way back to Paris, we stop at Giverny to see Monet's garden.
Thank you, Virginie. This reminds me, if you're an independent traveler, you're smart to take tours on your own. Just imitate this tour. This is the best 11 days. If you've never been to France before, when I do an independent travel talk, this is my opinion of the best 11 days in France, right? This tour, if you've never been before, right? Leaving Paris, Virginie told us, we entered the northwest corner of Burgundy. This is where my family lives, where our house is, where I hang my beret in the off-season. Burgundy's filled with romantic Romanesque churches and this castle that Virginie mentioned that's being built now according to a plan from the 1200s. This is the coolest site in Europe, I think, the newest, coolest site there is. And I've been to a lot of them. This is a recent site. It started 15 years ago, let's say, and it's going to take 35 years to build. So you've got time. And they're building it, an exact replica of a castle designed by the King Philippe Auguste from 1200, using only tools and techniques from that era. And the idea is to learn while they do it. And we get to learn with them. And apparently, so I went there this year, by the way, for the first time in 5 years and couldn't believe the difference. And it's quite a bit taller than you see now. We have a local guide dressed in the local garb who takes us through this site. So you see, this brings to life all those old castles you see, because you see the guys hewing the stone. How do they get the stone for these things? The rock comes out looking like that. How do they get it into squares? You'll see them hone the rock into rectangular pieces and then use the squirrel wheel here, or whatever they call that to get. Now that tower is now like 3 times that height.
That's because some of the Rick Steve members actually helped with this.
Well, we don't talk about that now. That's later. That's after they signed the contract, Virginie. So I took a group of friends there. My house, our house in Burgundy, where I based myself in research season, is an hour and a half from there, and I can't get enough of it. And I think we're the only tour group of adult tours that goes there. And we have 3 different tour routes that do it. Then we end that evening, as Virginie said, in the unknown backdoor city of Bourges, the center. It's a gorgeous city that you won't find other Americans in, with a Gothic cathedral to rival anything else we'll visit on the trip. And you get the town to yourself. Who's heard of Bourges in the central part of France? That's why we're there. And it's very close to Guédelon, so it makes it great overnight. We'll get a walking tour with a local guide, again, the next morning at the cathedral, who, in very mellow circumstances, without lots of crowds, will describe stained glass window and the features of Saint-Étienne, the Cathedral of Saint-Étienne, before leaving you free time to explore, I think, France's best city of half-timbered architecture and back streets just like this. It's a funny thing. Mostly the book that I write with Rick on France tells the tours what to do, suggests ideas, and they get it from the book. In this case, the tour members kept liking Bourges so much that last year I finally put it in the book because why isn't this in the book if people are so happy about this undiscovered place? So now you'll find Bourges in the guidebook. It took me a few years, and I'm thrilled to have it there. Then it's off to the happy hunting grounds of French kings and queens over the centuries in the Loire. You're looking at the Loire River and across to our favorite base, Amboise. Again, your guidebook that you'll have will give you restaurants and all sorts of sightseeing to do. This is the Chateau of Amboise. It's a lovely town of about 10,000 people. Great base to set up in and then go out and see the Chateau of the Loire Valley. It's also the place where Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 3 years of his life. Leonardo da Vinci, that's true, lived in Amboise right here in this home that I'm showing you and brought with him several of his paintings, 5 of them, I think, from Italy. They are in the Louvre Museum today, including the Mona Lisa, right? The Louvre Museum, that reminds me, is the collection of art of kings and queens of France over the centuries. What's great about visiting his home at Clos-Lucé? Does everybody go here? Talk about it for a second.
We're staying in Amboise, so during your free time you decide what you want to do, but it's a lovely little town. It's a beautiful walk where you see troglodyte dwellings. Troglodyte dwellings are dwellings that are in the tufa stone, built in the tufa stone, that's the local stone, and you get to explore on your own the Clos-Lucé.
And what you're looking at here are models of his inventions. This blows my mind when I go here, that were designed and paid for by IBM like 40 years ago, I think it was, from his drawings that were made 500 years ago. You'll see spaceships, tanks, all sorts of inventions that this Roman candle of ingenuity thought of so far ago. It's really an amazing sight. Then we use Amboise as our springboard to go off and see the greatest chateau there are in France. This is Chenonceau. It's everybody's favorite. It's the ladies' chateau because it was built and designed mostly by women, I think, if I'm right about that. And it's arcing over the Cher River, like Sunny and Cher River. Do you use that one at all on your?
Yeah, it's a river that rocks, yeah.
I'd like to apologize in advance for my friend.
You asked for it.
That's good. Chenonceau has everything, and it truly does. It has glorious gardens and magnificent interior to visit. It's the whole package, and we spend a lot of time there. What I like about the way we design our tours is this is the most sought-after chateau in the Loire, so we get there at 10 minutes of 9. It opens at 9. We're the first people in. It doesn't get really crowded until 10:30 or 11 when we're coming out. I love that kind of tour design, and I think it works very well. Then we're off to the granddaddy of them all, the King's Castle, Chambord. 440 rooms, 365 chimneys. You can have a fireplace in a different room every day of the year, right? This one we do at lunch because it's big enough that it's crowded, it doesn't matter. The interior is vast as the exterior. Leonardo da Vinci is said to have designed this double helix stairway. This is the most fun place to play because this is one spiral stairway interwoven in another. While you walk up one, a person walks down the other, and you don't see each other. It's hard to explain until you go there. Do you do that trick with people on a tour?
Yes, and half of the group on one side and half of the group on the other side.
And they don't see each other.
Never again.
That's what's wild about it. But I run into them once in a while on the gardens and the grounds, and they seem happy, Patrick. Yeah. Well, so we'll give you a good orientation and walking tour of the chateau, and then leave you alone to pretend like you're King Francois Ier, and you're looking out to the various hunting routes that radiate from this. These chateaux were built as hunting lodges. This was the soccer of its day and age. Hunting was the sport, right? Why 365 chimneys? Because hunting's a winter sport. Because the leaves fall off the trees. All the forests in France are deciduous. It makes sense then. I'm going to have my friends over to hunt with me in the winter, but it's cold. Let's hang a lot of tapestries and build a lot of fires and build a lot of fireplaces. So you can walk around the rooftop, that pincushion of spires and chimneys, and get brilliant views like this tour member did. Then it's off to Virginia's home, and where Patrick lives today, although he's lived all over France in his life, rather nomadic, to the really one of the most beautiful, spectacular coastlines of Brittany that there is. And I'm not just saying that to make you happy. Anything you want to say about this as I go? I know we'll stop at, everybody picks their own favorite Breton town, I guess, Fougères or Dinan.
When we get to Fougères, you get to listen to some Celtic music and get to taste some of the amazing food we have in Brittany. It's very, very different from the rest of France. So that's the great thing about France. No matter where you go, it's going to be different. And then some of the tour members got to meet my parents, and they got to speak some French. So I teach you French, and then I quiz you by having my parents who don't speak a word of English. And if you can speak French, they get a treat for you.
And you have free time to eat crêpes. This is what Virginia's land does better than anywhere else. You have to have a crepe here and at lunch, or you don't get back on the bus. That was my rule in the old days, right? Then it's off to the island abbey of Mont St. Michel, which, I mean, I wish I could turn the lights down so you could see these images better, but we're streaming online. Anyway, come back to one of my France talks when we aren't doing it in this manner. You'll see it a little bit better, but it is magnificent. The island abbey of Mont St. Michel is as magical as it appears. We arrive late in the day. There's no hurry to get there. And crawl up to the abbey, because if you get there before 5, this is what you run headlong into. Our groups arrive about 5:30, and the street looks like that. We spend the night on the island, in this hotel or one nearby. We don't go back down to the tourist hotels on the shore half an hour away. We're right there on the island. Does everybody carry their bags up? Tell me how that works.
Hey, we have to carry our bags up, yeah. What we try to do is to ask people to prepare a special bag for this occasion, to a smaller bag, because it's a bit of a climb to go to the place. And if there is still a lot of people in the streets. There are 2 tides on the Mont St. Michel. There's the tide of the water coming up and down. There's the tide of the tourists as well, coming up and down. Regular every day. So we try to avoid it. And the smaller the bag, the more efficient we are.
Right.
And you get the magical moment because you can enjoy the sunset from the ramparts, the wall along the island. And then one of my most magical memory is going early in the morning to the top of the island, which is touristy during the day, but at 7 in the morning, there's only the monks going to the abbey for what we call laude, which are the morning prayers. And you get to sit in that abbey. During the day, it's full of tourists, but just the monks, which is monks and nuns, you have about 15 of them left. And then you have the sunrise that you can see from the abbey, and they pull on the rope to ring the bells and wake up the whole village.
Wow.
It's magic.
That is, wow. I want to go on your tour. Sorry, Patrick. We'll have dinner together. I am humbled whenever, I didn't do those things when I, anyway, we'll have dinner together before going out to see the sun, the moon, the sunlit. Now you got me thinking of sunrises. The beautifully lit abbey at night. France is Europe's, the world's, in my opinion, capital of lighting its most important monuments. In the little village in Burgundy I live in, the Cistercian abbey is lit gorgeously at night. Maybe 5 people pass by, doesn't matter, it's important to them. Mont St. Michel, walking back down, if it's high tide and you see the water in front of it, which soon it will be returned to an island, but I don't have time to get into that with you right now. This is a magical thing to do in the evening. And then in the morning, you see you tour the abbey at that very top part that Virginia was talking about with a local guide, because we slept there. We were the first ones there. Imagine how crowded Mont St. Michel is. We slept there. It's a 5-minute walk up. We're the first ones in. We have a local guide give us a great history of its Carolingian, Romanesque history, etc. And then we're off to Bayeux, about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive away. And we leave. This is that tide thing. As the tide is coming in, our tide is going out. With the flow of people into Mont St. Michel. We're leaving as the crowds arrive. And then we drive 2 hours and get to Bayeux. Is it midday or so, early afternoon?
Yeah, we do a little stop in a little village, and then we get to Bayeux mid-afternoon. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then we have a chance to check into our hotel, the Hotel d'Argouges. Say that, d'Argouges.
Not bad.
No, man. That's one of those hard words to pronounce. One of my favorite hotels on the trip, and it's one of the highest listings in the book for staying in the lovely little town of Bayeux, which is most famous for 2 things, I suppose. First, the tapestry of the Reine Mathilde, to the victory of William the Conqueror over Harold at the Battle of Hastings from 1066. Phenomenal history lesson this ancient tapestry is. And it's also famous, though, for being a footspring to these 6 miles away, I think it is, to the coast nearby. The glorious Normandy coast that's near Bayeux, which looks like this in May. I mentioned before wildflowers blooming. That's colza. It looks like mustard plant, but it's a colza that's used for kind of an oil, more for a mechanical oil, is it used? Or is it used for cooking colza as much?
Canola, rapeseed.
Grapeseed, yeah.
Canola.
Thank you. 70 years ago now, this year, 70 years ago, it looked a little bit differently. And we're going to spend all day in the presence of an expert local historian. Usually it's a British person, I think, so we don't have any accent problems whatsoever. And we'll, not that we do with you.
We do the translation if necessary.
Thank you. I wandered into that one. We'll visit the, this is important to get right. It's important for me. It's important for you. You're Americans. Here's the one place in Europe where you had involvement in their history, or one of the few places. So we'll spend all day, and this is one of the most powerful memories I'm sure you'll have, maybe on almost any trip to Europe, because the strategy and the preparing behind the invasion of the D-Day beaches is so brilliantly explained by our local guides at leisure, so you can ask every question you have, trace down every possible monument you want to see in the areas we visit. We'll see the gun embattlements like this at Longues-sur-Mer, and there were 6 of these that capped this impressive Point du Hoc, as it's called. Point du Hoc in French is how they'd pronounce it. This was the cliff that there were 225 rangers had to scale to disarm those 6 guns, such as the one I showed you. And it sticks so far out into the ocean that they had to do this so that they could land the ships for the D-Day landings. It was the most bombed area, I think, in the D-Day beaches. Anything you want to say, Virginie?
And this year is the 70th anniversary of D-Day, so they're saying it's going to be one of the last big commemoration because our veterans are getting older. And so the whole year, not just June 6th, we're going to have lots of veterans from anywhere coming to Normandy.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it's a powerful site. I hope you go there, whether it's with us on a group or on your own. And if you do go on your own, consider seriously the expense of a local guide there that I list in the book. I think that's worth your while. And you can stand right where the Rangers landed their grappling hooks to climb up from below and attack the guns and the Germans in place, right? We end our day, I think, at the American Cemetery. 10,000 graves from Americans who chose to have their remains left here on Omaha Beach. It's a powerful site. If you could, well, that's fast, pardon me. There, if you could see this cross, it says Preston T. Nyland. He was one of the brothers, if you saw the movie Saving Private Ryan. It's based on real things. And standing in front of his grave and a cross and seeing and remembering, if you've seen the movie, adds to the experience. You can also walk down to Omaha Beach. You have time at the site to do so. And imagine the Americans landing in the boats on that beach below. It's a powerful sight.
So it's a very moving day overall. I mean, the cemetery caps it all, but it's a very moving day being on the sites where everything happens and having really all those personal stories about people who fought and who were there. It's very, very impressive and definitely very moving.
It's also a part of France, whenever I go, that the French are still thankful to the Americans for our involvement. I mean, yeah, of course they should, but it's 70 years ago, and the veterans are pretty much gone now, but it is still an area where you feel it. Their gratitude and their thankfulness anyway. Oops, then we end up looping back to Paris through the Seine, along the Seine River Valley, stopping at Claude Monet's gardens in his house, where he cultivated his art and his flowers for the last 40 years of his life, inventing this, or helping produce this style of art that we get to visit in Paris called Impressionism. You get to climb all over his gardens and the ponds, the lily ponds that inspired his paintings in the Orangerie Museum in Paris before arriving back into Paris mid-afternoon, I think it is, for our last night together in Paris. Most people on this tour extend on, I think, and do 2 or 3 or 4 more days in Paris, or maybe they go off in the other direction.
Yeah, a lot of people do, because we're back on the same starting point, so that's pretty easy to navigate and find your way around.
The wine regions of Eastern France, which today is called the best of Eastern France, which before was called Vineyards and Villages of Eastern France. We just like to change the name of this so you think you're taking a different tour every year. So I have last year's title, but it doesn't matter. If it doesn't match your catalog, don't worry. And Patrick, what do we... Oh, I mentioned, did I do this? Wine regions of Eastern France. Ah, there you go, Patrick.
That's much better. Looks
Thank
like
you.
it. Okay, so we leave from Reims, which is a little town an hour and a half from Paris by train, where we taste some champagne. I'm going to talk about wine around the place. We go to Verdun when we get to visit the sites of the First World War, which are very moving, from the 1960s mainly. 1916. Colmar, then we get to the 3 nights in Colmar when we get to discover a lot about the wine from Colmar and this very specific region along the border of Germany. We drive down to Beaune where we're in Burgundy, which is really very the image of France, rolling hills and cows in in the fields, and where we drink a little bit of wine as well if we have to. We go to Chamonix. We go up to the mountains, very at the foot of the Mont Blanc, and there the wine is pretty good, but the big specialty is the cheese up there. We eat a lot of cheese. We're gonna cheese you out if you come with us up there. Drive down through Annecy, visit the lake, spend some time on the lake, and get down to Vaison-la-Romaine, which is in the Côte du Rhône. La Romaine, the Roman town. So that's really the place where we're gonna see a lot of Roman sites and drink some wine. And then we're gonna go to Marseille when we don't have time to drink wine because it's time to go back home.
I want to go on this tour. So you'll most likely arrive in Paris, grab one of the bullet trains. It takes 45 minutes now to get to Reims. It's the newest of the alignments for the bullet train, the TGV. It goes to eastern France and northeastern France. Their trains leave more than every hour. It's so simple for anybody to get from Paris to Reims. Reims, R-E-I-M-S, is what the Americans would pronounce it like. And be ready. There are a lot of words like this that your guide will help you with, and you'll figure it out. Anyway, we start. Your train travels through the special vineyards that produce the three primary grapes that make champagne, and we stay in the city of Reims, the really venerable historic city in Paris of Reims, for 2 nights. The Cathedral in Reims is one of the great ones in all of Europe. You'll get an elaborate walking tour outside and in to start your first day, full day with the group. You'll also have a chance, I think, on free time to visit the war rooms or the surrender rooms. This was the room where Dwight Eisenhower directed the last, 8 months or something of World War II, and where the Germans officially surrendered to the Allies on May 7th, 1945, making May 8th Victory in Europe Day. That's a small little site. It's low-key, but it's powerful for Americans in particular, I think. You'll have a chance to get a tour of a champagne cellar, I think.
Yes, we do, yeah. If we have to, let's go and drink some champagne.
And get to taste it. It varies by which group, which one of the famous caves you go to, cellars that you go to, before having a second night that's free in Reims. And then the next morning we meet our bus and we head further east. And here the history lessons become a little bit tougher. On the Vineyards and Villages tour, now it's called Wine Regions of Eastern France. We'll stop in Verdun on our way to the Alsace, where we will spend 3 nights in Alsace, stopping here about an hour outside of Reims. Here, where our local guide will take us through the fortifications and explain the museums and explain to us the War of 1914 to 1918 that was then in 1916 centered right here in Verdun, where 700,000 men would die in one region, largely because of trench warfare and the use of modern technology, but old war principles, if you will, battle principles. Machine guns, gas, poisonous gas, airplanes, all sorts of things were used for the first time in this war. It was a battle of attrition. Whoever ended up with the most men standing won. And ultimately, thanks to the involvement of the Americans and the Brits, the French and the Allies won. But the experience is one that is powerful and a lesson that obviously wasn't ended here because we had World War II only 20-some-odd years later. We'll end our day in Alsace for 3 nights. It's nice to stop for 3 nights on a tour. And it's a gorgeous area at the foot of the Vosges Mountains. The city of Colmar is our base. Anything you want to say about the beautiful city of Colmar?
Yeah, it's a lovely, it's a lot of flowers. There's water running through the town. It's got a couple of very, very interesting museums. I'm sure Steve's going to talk about it there. And it's got a very distinctive culture, food, amongst other things, but which is very, very close to, we are close to Germany, to the German border, and the culture is very different from the rest of France, very Germanic-oriented culture.
And here is the ultimate cultural blend and marriage. When I did the first TV show with Rick a long time ago, we sat on a bench and I had people introduce themselves from Colmar, the villages. And in every case, their first name was French and their last name was German. So the chosen name was French. Martin Schongauer, Maurice Schembachler. And it's still that way today, and it lives on through its food. You have sauerkraut, sausage with fine wine sauces, as the choucroute is the most famous dish here. You'll have a chance to sample that with us in a group at one of our favorite restaurants, and then get a walking tour of one of the most beautiful ancient cities in Europe that I know of. A huge area of pedestrian-only streets in Colmar. You'll see the beautiful churches in which a lot of the art lies today or is hung today, built from this yellow and reddish rose-colored stone from the Vosges Mountains. including which now the Unterlinden, the Matthias Grunewald's Issenheim altarpiece now resides in one of the churches in Colmar because of renovation work going on to the main museum. So you'll go into some of these churches to see the great works of art. This is a 5-panel painting. Anything to say about this one?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to talk about too much about it, but the museum itself is being restored and transformed. It's very exciting because they're going to offer us a new presentation of the painting, and it's going to be 10 times better than used. It used to be in a little room. It was difficult to navigate around. It's going to be amazing starting this spring, this year.
And it's a 5-paneled painting that could be opened, and it was designed for people who were suffering from Reye's syndrome, a terrible disease in the Middle Ages, and they would open different panels at certain days of the week for these patients in the monastery where they were being taken care of. All right, and then you'll also have a chance to visit the home and the museum to the fellow sculptor whose name is Auguste Bartholdi. Does anybody know what famous sculpture he might have made for us in the United States, in New York City, in the port that's pretty big? Yes, it's a little known fact. The sculptor of the Statue of Liberty, right? And visit his home and museum with many other great works of art before heading out in the next day, really. Spending the whole day, I think we do on the Route du Vin?
Yeah, pretty much the whole day doing villages, and we visit a big chateau, the Kaiserberg, and the village of Kaiserberg, the Hochkönigsburg Chateau, and we go along all those lovely little villages, which are, again, very, very, very different from anything else you're going to see in France, anywhere.
We'll have a chance to walk in the vineyards, as I showed you. We take a local guide for this day, I think, still in Alsatian.
Yeah, a local
and
guide was...
we'll also have a chance to sample, again, all of the various white wines of this area, Riesling or Tokay or Pinot Gris, and on and on. But they're all white wines, except for the one red wine they make, which isn't worth mentioning, because we do it better in Burgundy.
Not Tokay anymore. Not Tokay
now
anymore.
It's
called Pinot
Really?
something. Yeah, you're not allowed to call it Tokay anymore because it's coming from Hungary, and it's a place in Hungary, the Tokay. So they've been fighting against the Alsace region to call it like that. So change the name. It's still good.
I should mention,
a different name. Still good.
This is not a wine tasting tour. Rick does not want wine tasting tours, and you'll see, I don't know, a handful of people chose to do the wine tasting here. The rest of them want to explore the village. A few times, everybody wants to do the wine tasting because we think it's so important, because like the champagne cellar. I think everybody should at least see this because they're so historic and you drop down so low to see them. But a lot of the times it's totally up to you, and you have other things you might want to do. Our tours are good this way for allowing for people to do different options. Then it's off to, of course, the most beautiful region in France where I met Patrick. You and I were living village from each other along the Burgundy Canal. Patrick was one village down from me when I met him. And he was driving a bus when I met him. He's one of the successful converts from the bus driver for the barges. In fact, this barge probably.
Yeah, in fact, I became part of the company not because of my knowledge of French or anything like that, because I was a bad driver. So they said it was much better if you get on the right seat on the bus instead of the left seat.
That was good fun. Those were the days.
My claim to fame.
So we love to introduce you to Burgundy. We know it all well, very well. And we stay 2 nights in the gorgeous city of Beaune, about 25,000 people, the wine capital of Burgundy. And these are famous wines. Easy to get to know the wines. They aren't nearly as expensive or sophisticated as you think they are. It's a very accessible region. We'll visit the medieval hospital, the Hôtel Dieu. One of the first, this really adds another element to your understanding of the Middle Ages. You see churches, you see castles from the feudal period, and now you see a hospital that was built in the Middle Ages, the very end of the Middle Ages, and was used for, saving the poor people during the 100 Years' War, although you were probably a lot better off if you were not in the hospital, because contagion wasn't a thing that was known at the time, and more people got sick and died, I think, from being in the hospital than not being in the hospital. And you get to see weapons, I called it, instruments like bloodletting. They look like caulking guns, by the way. But the lesson, sounds good, doesn't it? You really want to go in there, don't you, after that description? I did a pretty good job. All right, Beaune, we go there, we arrive, as we try to many times, on a Friday night or the night before market day. The next day's market day. You have a chance just to let yourself loose in one of the more beautiful market towns there is in France, or take a bike ride. Beaune is my favorite place to ride bikes from. It's a 2-mile bike ride right through the vineyards. It's a bike path only to the town of Pommard and Meursault. You can get back in time to meet the group and hop on a bus, and then we'll take our own cruise through the vineyards down to the Châteaux of Rouille. And we have our own private tour, I think. Can you tell us, this is one I don't know that well.
Yeah, that's a place which is still run by a Comte, the Count of Rouille. He's still running the place, he owns the place. And the chateau has been in the family for 900 years, something like that. So it's very recent. And so they've been running the place. They own the land around, and they do their own wine. So what we do, we get there, we visit the private apartments of the count. They showed us around all those historic piece of furnitures and glasses and paintings that they've got in their place. And then we do some wine tasting. And then, if weather permitting, we do picnic in the ground of the chateau, overlooking. Oh, that's our picnic here. Overlooking the ground and eating all the marvelous things we bought on the market. In
the morning in Beaune, yeah. I love that. Market day in Beaune, everybody gets a job. It's potluck picnic time. We'll pay for it, I think, but you'll take care of cheese, you'll take care of meat, you'll take care of fruits, and you buy ugly things. That's what somebody always has to buy the ugly things. So we'll give you the ugly thing duty, like things you don't recognize, and we'll try them out, right? All right, I learned that from Rick. All right, that night, or one of the nights, we want to make sure you have a chance to try escargot, many foods, beef Burgundy, coq au vin, escargot, jambon persillé, ham.
Œuf Meurette.
Oh, I love eggs on Monet sauce. All these are Burgundian, and you have 2 nights to get into it. And I go out of my way in the book to provide lots of restaurant recommendations. We eat together one night, I imagine?
One night, the first night together, and then there's a lot of restaurants in Beaune to be able to catch up on all those things. Yes.
And you really should know and again, your guide will tell you don't tip in France. All right, you'll learn all these things. For meals, you don't tip in France unless they were really nice to you, then maybe 5%, right? And many
yeah, it's a gesture of appreciation. Tipping in France is just saying, okay, I really liked the place. You were very, very nice to me. I'll leave a little bit extra on the table there. But it never goes any further than that. It's not at all as it is in the States, like automatic as it is here.
Right. You just saved the price of the class you took today with that tip. Then we'll head up to the French Alps, and either on your way up or on your way back, depending on the weather report, we'll stop in the most beautiful lakefront city I know of in France, Annecy, A-N-N-E-C-Y, the French say Annecy. And you'll have, a couple hours midday to wander along. This is their green lake, if you're from Seattle, right? But it's a little bit different with the alpine peaks in the background. But there's a bike and roller skate path that runs 2/3 of the lake. One of my favorite things to do here is to rent a bike and go up halfway and take the steamer back and roll the bike on the boat and do a loop trip that way. I'm not sure if you have enough time to do that, but you can certainly walk or ride a certain section of this and wander into this gorgeous city with canals that nobody's ever heard. I mean, you've heard of Lucerne and you've heard of Geneva. This city really is prettier. I think Lucerne is one pretty city, but Annecy really wins my award. Then we head up to the heart of the Alps. This is the place, 1924, the first Winter Olympics right here. Every street is named after a mountain climber. Every street is identified by elevation. This is Chamonix Mont Blanc, the greatest of the French resorts, the oldest, the first one. We're going to climb that mountain. Remember, in late 1700s, 1800s, suddenly we were climbing mountains because they're there. They sprouted one of the first mountain resorts right here. Oops, and I went forward, didn't I? You were laughing at me. I was rolling there, too, without looking back. Mont Blanc. And there's glaciers all over that look like they're flowing right down, and they're going to swallow up the town of Chamonix. When I research books, and I get to do it every year for 3 months, I'm a mountain person, so this is invariably, I don't hand this one off. I hand off to researchers places I don't need to see every single year all the time. I have to go here for my own sort of invigoration. Sensational place. You're a skier here, aren't you, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm a skier, and Chamonix is a great place for skiing. It's an amazing place for that.
And how's the fondue?
The fondue is melted. Yeah? Which is the literal translation. Fondue means melted.
It does.
That's what it is.
Perfect.
So 3 different types of cheeses, a little bit of white wine, and dip your bread into it. I've got a little story about that. Is that sometimes I was working in the Alps and I was very short of money. I worked for a restaurant, and I was employed by a restaurant to be the cleaner of the dishes, but not the cleaner of all the dishes, the cleaner of the fondue pots.
Oh, God.
I survived the week with indigestion every night because of the melt of the smell coming up there.
You have 2 nights there. You can try raclette. You can try pirade. You can try all sorts of other dishes that are wonderful cheese, melted dishes, gooey cheese when you're in Chamonix. Then on your full free day, and we can help you with reservations. You can reserve the main lift up to the top of the Aiguille du Midi, and I'm going to show you guys a slide you haven't seen yet. You'll go up to 12,900 feet. It takes 2 gondolas to get there, transfer. And then at the very top, this is the new panoramic thing at the very top of the needle. Check it out. They just finished this like a month ago. And they sent me an image the tourist office did. And I wrote it up. You'll see it in the book. And I say, well, seeing is believing. And sure enough, they got it done by 2014. And you are really at the top. This is the most sensational spot I think I know of. Please, Patrick, if you want to say something.
When you look at it, when you're there, when you look how it's built on top of the needle up there, it's just unbelievable. So you find places where they explain how they built it, how they brought the staff, and how they made it. But it's just unreal.
So this little glassed-in encasement where you're standing over about a 4,000-foot drop down is part of the top, where there's a restaurant, there's an elevator to the needle where you're on the top of. Now, it's really a remarkable man-made accomplishment, as you see in Switzerland all the time. But what you don't see in Switzerland all the time, and the greatest single thing you can do for Alps appreciation, is take one of these little teacup cars. And you and your partner can be at about 13,000 feet dangling for 45 minutes as you cross over the Alps. The Matterhorn's to your left, Mont Blanc to your right, and all these. I'm serious. The Matterhorn is to your left when you do this, with all of the peaks in front of you. Get to Italy. We used to say you have to bring your passport. Now we don't because of the European Union. Have some pasta, then return to France. And we've done tours before, by the way, where we continued. Everybody went this way, up and over with their backpacks, and down, and the bus met us on the other side. You only needed a day pack because we kept the packs on the bus. But anyway, and then you come back down about halfway down to Chamonix. You don't walk back down the 7,000 feet to Chamonix, but you wander along an undulating route and then take a little red train back from the Mer de Glace Glacier, the largest glacier in France, certainly in Europe, the Mer de Glace. Phenomenal sightseeing. Chamonix gets me excited. Then we completely change environments, and we drive south down the Alps and into Provence, south of Lyon, through the vineyards, and into our hill town for the next 3 nights. Is this cool? It's one of my favorite places. We wrote a whole book on Provence, it seems. And Vaison-la-Romaine makes just a perfect base, as I suggest in the book, for enjoying the region. This is the view from my hotel room. This is the hotel we use on tour. It's in the old city of Vaison-la-Romaine. And the next morning, we climb down the hill and go into the new city, which was really the old city. It's new and old. As we cross the Roman Bridge, and then we visit Roman Vaison-la-Romaine. It's a mini Pompeii. You have to think of it that way with a local guide. It has everything. The whole city is there. Temples, monuments, Roman theaters. It's a terrific, it's tiny. It's not as impressive as Pompeii, but what's impressive to me is in the town of Vaison-la-Romaine, there were more people living here in the Roman era 2,000 years ago than today. Isn't that astonishing to go to a place that has fewer people living in it than 2,000 years ago? And you have free time in what I would call the new city, which is built around the Roman ruins. So Vaison-la-Romaine is like part hill town and part level town where the Roman ruins were. And then you have time to have lunch on your own, do whatever you want before we head out to see one of the greatest Roman theater there is. I don't care if it's in Italy or anywhere, in Orange, about half an hour drive away through the vineyards, where you can understand the value of a stage wall. That's what separates this from all others. It's left intact. The barbarians didn't tear it down, and wars and earthquakes didn't do it either. And we'll get the greatest example of that Roman theater before then doing our wine loop. This is Côte du Rhône country. If you're into wine, you know the Côte du Rhône. These are wines, blended wines. Châteauneuf du Pape is one of the most famous examples. And our wine road, it is absolutely stunning topography. This is Mont Ventoux, one of the famous hills that they ride up the Tour de France. And we'll do a loop around these peaks of the Dentelle de Montmirail, stopping on our way to sample the wine, villages, and visit some of our favorite winemakers here in this region, where wine averages about 5 to 8 euros a bottle, I think it is. Very inexpensive wine. Then we oh yes, we do a fun wine tasting. This is at, what's the place called?
Mourchon.
Tell a little bit about that place.
Yeah, Domaine de Mourchon. We get to this little village called Séguré, and we leave the bus at the bottom because the bus can't go all the way to the domain. Then they come to pick us up, and sometimes they come with just a pickup truck. So all of us get on the pickup truck. It looks like I don't know, Mexican people going to work in the morning. And
you've signed an insurance thing. It's okay. It's all right.
So they take us all up the road there, and
what are
we
you
get
doing on my tours?
In the middle of nowhere, just at the top of the mountains there. The surrounding is breathtaking. breathtaking. I mean, it's just having the mountain for yourself. And we do this wine tasting. We visit the winery. We go on the vineyard itself, picking up some grapes and tasting them if that's the right time for that. And when the wine tasting is done, we go to the other side of the building, and we've got the lunch prepared by a family in their garden, surrounded by little trees, and they do special treats for us, a bit of cheese, plenty of nice things.
You like cheese, don't you?
Yeah, I do like cheese, yeah.
This tour ends, those 3 nights in Vaison-le-Romain. We have 2 full days to enjoy the area around. And then we end about 2.5-hour drive away in the most important port city in France, Marseille, second largest city, and it's the oldest city in France, 600 years before the birth of Christ. And our hotel is right on the old port. It's one of the more scenic ports I know of for a major city in all of Europe. We'll take a walking tour of Le Panier district and take you up to this amazing church, right? We go up to this church of Notre Dame. Please, Patrick, take it.
Notre Dame de la Garde, yeah, I was just going to say the name. Yeah, Notre Dame de la Garde, where from the top there, the church itself is very interesting, but the views from there are absolutely unbelievable. You've got all the town with the bay, with the port, and all the mountains around, which is breathtaking again.
And it has a very convenient airport for flying out of. Many people, so it's not on the Riviera, but it's on the edge of the French Riviera. Many people continue, some people I suppose continue on and go east toward Nice and spend more time in that area from this tour, but it's very convenient for flying home from.
Many people take more time in Marseille as well, because in fact we spend only 1 night in Marseille, and even if we do Notre Dame de la Garde and the visit of the little district around, Marseille was this year the capital, the European capital of culture, and they they kind of rebuilt a lot of museums, transform everything. It's an amazing place to stay as well. It's very, very good.
And we might finish off, if you're lucky and you have a chance, with some bouillabaisse. This is where it comes from in Marseille.
Yeah, that's the food of the poor. I mean, like most of the food in France, think of Burgundy with the snails. Who had the original idea to eat some snail? How desperate were you to eat the snails? And the bouillabaisse is exactly the same. It's the leftovers of the good part of the fish are gone. Let's make a fish with what's left, a soup with what's left, sorry. And that's the bouillabaisse for you here.
Are you ready, Virginia? The last tour I get to talk about today, Loire to the south of France. Now we're going west in the country of France, starting...
So we're starting in Chartres, which is less than an hour away from Paris. Lovely town of Chartres. You would call it a city in France, but after Paris, it just feels like a small town. And then we base ourselves in Chinon to explore the castles of the Loire Valley. And we're going on our way south to the food region. I mean, every region of France is food, but the Périgord is known for good, rich food. You'll love it. So we stay in Sarlat for 3 nights. And then we move on to Carcassonne, one of the best preserved walled cities of Europe, before we head to Arles in Provence and finish on the French Riviera, or la Côte d'Azur in Nice. That's how you say it, right? Nice? No. Oh, sorry, Nice.
Okay, Nice is Nice, or Nice is
you
Nice.
Guys,
so we don't know, but...
My freaking comedy team next to me here. All right. So last summer, I did 2 new TV shows with Rick. I get to do those now. My kids are grown, so I'm back on the TV shows with him as I was a long time ago. And we started one of my favorite cities. I call it a village, too, really. Chartres, with the grandest cathedral that I know of in Western Europe, Gothic cathedral. You'll see it from all angles. By the way, that's the view from your hotel room. I'm serious. We use the same hotels to film this that the tour uses, and Rick and I were both in rooms next to each other. Can you believe knocking on the wall? Can you believe this? Honestly, it's true. And then we visit the cathedral with the greatest expert of Gothic architecture there is, certainly for the Chartres Cathedral, Malcolm Miller. He moved in about 40 years ago, something like that.
A bit over 40 years, yeah.
Scottish fellow, however long he's been there. He's 90 now, I think, or close to it, and still is the authority on bringing to life the Middle Ages through the eyes of the cathedral at Châteaux. You'll learn way more than just about the church on his walking tour. He doesn't do tours for groups anymore, but he likes us. He loves Rick, so he does our groups. You'll see stained glass explained better than you've ever heard it before, and then have a chance to visit a stained glass center where you can see how it was made and is made today. I think you even can do some hands-on.
Yeah, you do make stained glass, and you bring your souvenir for the holidays or for gifts, and you learn how they actually made it in the Middle Ages, and you get to do it yourself. Not like in the Middle Ages, a bit more, a bit safer.
Yes, a bit safer, and it's just right next to the cathedral. Then you have free time in this town that Virginie said is just a lovely place to have free time in. It's known for its cathedral, but it should also be known for its walking streets, its Wednesday and Saturday market, and its riverfront setting on the Eure River. We like to say in our guidebook, you walk down to it, and before you know it, you're there. They laugh more at you than, yeah, I know. Yeah. E-U-R-E. And then you have one free night, and there are so many restaurants with this kind of floodlit view of the cathedral at night. How great is that, to eat with this view? Then we join our bus the next day, and as Virginie said, we head south. We're going to repeat, if you've been on the Heart of France tour, one chateau, the greatest of them that we think is in Chenonceau, such as I showed you before, and then set up camp for 2 nights here in a lot of people's favorite town of the Loire on the Vienne River, Chinon. Chinon is famous for its castle, and also where Joan of Arc hung out, getting Charles VIII. Do I have the right Charles? I often get that wrong. Go ahead, Virginie, please.
7.
7,
Charles
8, 9.
Charles.
Yeah, it's Charles.
Charles,
Charles,
yeah. Okay. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. We stay in the coolest hotel, run by the greatest family. And Rick, we just adore these people. And I know, I don't want to give away the surprise, right?
No, you don't want to.
Okay, so I won't give away that surprise, but it's a fun place. You're going to be enveloped into a French household in Chinon. And then the next day, we'll get outside the town, visit the greatest gardens at Villandry, Garden Chateau, and probably go visit Azay-le-Rideau, reflecting chateau on a pond. And then come back for free time in your favorite town.
And Chinon is where the famous 17th century writer Rabelais is from, and we like to make literary connection. So we talk about Rabelais, and if you've heard about him, it's just talking about giant people in France eating lots of food. And maybe you heard about the expression of a gargantuesque dinner? Gargantua is one of Rabelais' famous person. So we talk about this, and obviously at the end of the day, we go to an amazing restaurant where you get to get a gargantuesque dinner.
All right. And you have free time to explore the castle we mentioned before and learn about Charles VII and Joan of Arc and Richard the Lionheart and Eleanor of Aquitaine, all of whom spent time here, and nobody knows about it, mostly because most of the castle is ruined. But there's something about ruined castles after all those perfectly restored and perfectly built chateaux that make you realize these are older. And they had a different purpose when they were built. They were for defensive purposes, whereas the chateau are glamour palaces, really, that you've seen. Then we head down to one of the most, I have to say, even being from Burgundy, one of the most gorgeous parts of France, into the Dordogne. The Dordogne is the name of the river, and the villages that cap it along its cliff sides like Baynac are our feature. This is where traditions run deep, where people take their ducks and geese for walks in the morning and evening instead of dogs, and where we sleep dead center in the wonderful town of Sarlat. Again, about S-A-R-L-A-T, 10,000 people. We arrive on a Friday night, I think it is. Or is it Tuesday night?
Thursday night. Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah.
Oh,
Thursday.
right. We're 3 nights, pardon me.
Yeah, Thursday night.
All right. Anyway, and then the next morning is market day, or one of the next mornings is market day. That same square absolutely erupts, and all of the pedestrian streets in Sarlat erupt with local foods, where you can do your own shopping, and we celebrate with a potluck picnic, maybe on the river here, where we're going to make sure that anybody who is even remotely interested in canoeing has a chance to canoe and get out of the bus, get out of your car, get off the train, I like to say. And this is not that difficult of water to paddle down. You're going downstream, stopping to visit castles like Castelnau, Baynac. This is the stuff, these are magic moments. You can actually walk from your canoe up to that castle, then back down again and continue on. Yes, you can. And you'll do it, Virginie or Patrick will go with you on the tour as well. And then I like to wander up to the chateau, the castle, the fortified castle of Baynac. And this is big stuff during the 100 Years' War between Britain and France, right? And you'll see across from the French side, this is Baynac, some of the gorgeous views up and down river to the British side on the other side of the river. On another day, with 3 nights, we get to spend our time here to celebrate the greatest tourist draw to this area, and deservedly so. There are more prehistoric artifacts and more caves open to the public here with original cave art from as old as 18,000 years ago here in the Dordogne River. We'll visit one of them, depending on what reservation we get when we go. This is Ruffignac, and it's really remarkable to visit these caves. Your guide will take you through on a tour. Tell me about how that works. Will you, Virginie or Patrick?
Well, in Ruffignac, that's interesting. That's an interesting day because that's the same day we do the canoe ride. So we do a bus ride, we get a canoe ride, and when we go in the caves, we take a train. We get a little train which takes us from the entrance of the cave, 1 kilometer, so 3/4 of a mile down the cave, and then you suddenly discover those drawings on the walls, and it's very, very impressive.
And it's original. I think it's 14. This one's 14 or 15,000 years old. Remarkable. This and the D-Day beaches are two destinations that always, I think, blew people away on tours with us that they weren't expecting. All right, after 3 nights, and I'm going to finish this. I got 5 minutes, so you can relax, and I'll get through the end of this itinerary on time. I have to be on schedule. We'll spend 1 night in Carcassonne. Just like Mont St. Michel, we'll arrive after 5. Just as the sun gets low, our hotel has this view of the greatest walled city and fortified city in France. In the evening, you'll cross over within its walls, walk its walls for free. 80% of the perimeter you can walk for free. Have cassoulet, right? Duck, sausage, beans, white beans, and fat, I think, kind of. It's really good.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And then go out, either you're on your own, for a floodlit walk of Carcassonne at night. This is Carcassonne. This is one of my favorite things, is to take my walking tour from the book or the tour you give in the daytime and then go back and do it by yourself at night. It really does look like this at night. Then we're off for 2 nights in Provence, passing through roads like these plain-treed lined roads in the southern part of France, crossing to the greatest, I think, of the Roman ruins I've ever seen, I suppose, with the Colosseum in Rome. This is the Pont du Gard that carried 44 million gallons of water from a spring about 30 miles distance, I think, to the important city of Nîmes. And then we land for 2 nights in the other important Roman city of Arles. We have 2 nights here to explore its remarkable Roman history with a local guide in the morning to make its old arena, its Colosseum. 25,000 people come alive, as well as its theater. Most Roman theaters look like this these days. So the one that you saw before in orange with a full stage wall, it would have looked the same size. You have to just imagine that one here in Arles. It's still fantastic to see. You'll have time to go to the main squares and hang out and have a café au lait and be alive, sipping your coffee, soaking in the sun of southern France. You can also do your own walking tour using our guidebook On the Footsteps of Vincent van Gogh, who was so moved by the people and the sights in this region. And there's none of his art, there may be, but there's none right now of his original art there. But what you can do is stand where he stood, and they've replicated his work, and see Starry Night over the Rhone River. You're standing right there where he was when he painted it. In some ways, that's better for me than seeing the real art. All right, then it's off through the countryside of Provence, stopping in the evening or in the early morning. We'll do it one way or the other in Les Baux, one of the lovely, spectacular hill towns nearby, before ending this tour in Nice. Great airport that is just right about there. Great, beautiful city with a new light rail system. We'll explore its old town with the assistance of it was Italian until, I mentioned before, until 1871, so it feels like Rome when you look at it, and it acts like Rome. And you can go on a walk of the Promenade des Anglais on your own if you like, and enjoy this city that is wonderful year-round. There are great modern art museums in this part of France. I think the Riviera specializes in modern art. This is one that's dedicated to Marc Chagall, and even if you're not into modern art, you want to go here. His work is so powerful, moving, spiritual, inspirational. Next door is the museum dedicated to Henri Matisse, a contemporary of his, who painted a bit before Chagall, and you can see his work as well. You have 2 nights in Nice to enjoy the balmy weather, the outdoor sunshine, and walking in the old city, and then eating even the poorer sister of bouillabaisse. This is called bourride, B-O-U-R-R-I-D-E, one of my favorite soupy type dishes that's a lot less expensive today than the now famous bouillabaisse is. It's a fraction of the price. All right, that's the village, that's the best of Eastern France tour. If you have a few more minutes, you can stay a few more days. I highly recommend you consider our Riviera tour. We run it in the off-season only because it's too busy to spend a whole week in Nice in the high season. And we spend a whole week based in Nice. In addition to what you just saw, you'll also see hill towns like this. Well, the Alps really pour right down onto the Riviera. We'll find the birthplace of perfume in Grasse, the city of Grasse. And you'll go to a great museum and get a tour of a factory and sample the product of perfume. And you'll also have a chance to go to nearby villages, towns like Antibes, a fraction of the size of Nice. Lovely. And you may want to extend, if you're on our village, on our other tour, go next door half an hour away and spend a few nights in Antibes here. See the Picasso Museum right on the water. Remarkable. This is where he lived during for 3 years during World War II. And go the other direction, east, toward the little village of Villefranche-sur-Mer, and see on our Riviera tour, the Villa Rothschild that stands next to Bill Gates. Or no, it's Paul Allen's house. Right? It does, on the Cap Ferrat. It's gorgeous. Beautiful gardens, stunning setting. It's like a chateau on the Riviera. Before finishing your week on the Riviera, here in Monaco, the country of Monaco, where you can, 11:55 every morning, they have a changing of the guard that is funny because there are fewer people in the guard than there are in the Philharmonic for the country of Monaco, but who cares? It's a lovely Prince Rainier's Palace, which is now Prince Albert's Palace. You can visit Jacques Cousteau's aquarium and end your day in the evening, maybe late afternoon, on our French Riviera tour in the off-season, gambling at the Casino of Monte Carlo, which is one of the neighborhoods of the Principality of Monaco. And all the money you have left over that you don't want to take home with you, you can just blow right there on that one night if you want to. So there you are. All of these destinations are written up in the catalog that you have in front of you. All of our tours and our guidebooks are updated on our website. It's $100 off on any tour until Monday at midnight. So sign up now. If you think you're going to go, I think you should take advantage of that $100 price. Whether you're going on the French and Heart of France tour with Virginie, or the Loire to South tour with Patrick, or the Village and Vineyards or the Eastern France tour with Chris or one of our American guides, I know you'll have a great experience. And you'll fall in love with this country and its people just as I have. Merci, everybody. Thank you so much for your attention. Bon voyage.
And that was Steve Smith taking us on a wonderful assortment of all of our French tours, our France tours. And up next at 5 p.m. Pacific time, Heidi Van Soel will give a slideshow talk on Rick Steves' Best of Sicily, Best of Southern Italy tours. But first, let's spend a couple minutes to speak with some of our France guides. Thanks so much for being here. Let me start with you, Virginie Moret. Thanks for being here on Test Drive a Tour Guide. Can you give us a bit more information about you? Where are you from and which tours do you lead?
Bonjour. So my name is Virginie Moret and I come from Brittany, Bretagne, which is the northwest part of France, the Celtic part of France. And I lead tours all over France, but the main three tours are the Paris one-week tour and the Paris in the heart of France, and also the western part of France, which is Loire to the south.
Very interesting. And you know, so many Americans find the French language intimidating. And I hear that during your tours, you actually give French lessons while on the bus. How do you make this fun, and how do your tour members then put it into practice?
So on the Paris and the Heart of France tour, we start in Paris, and it is very intimidating for people because everybody speaks actually English in Paris, so they don't get to practice their French. But as soon as we leave Paris and we go to the next town, Bourges, on the way in the bus, I teach them about the French language. I used to be a French teacher in the United States, so I love this part of the trip. And we learn about the basics, how to greet people, bonjour monsieur, bonjour madame, how to count. We do some mathematics, yes. Sure. And we also learn about food, because you come to France to talk about food.
Of course.
And we learn how to order a picnic. So we get all of those things done together. And the day after in Bourges, on Saturday, is the day of the market, a local market, not a market for tourists. And our travelers get to practice their French and go buy food for a picnic. So they get to practice the metric system, taste some cheese before they buy it, taste some of the great bread, le pain, les légumes, vegetables, les fruits, and they make up a picnic all together. I have vivid memories of pictures of travelers with, the local sellers, because they do not speak a word of English, and they manage to get what they want. So that's the best.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, speaking of food, wine and cheese are such a big part of French culture, and so can you tell me a bit about the opportunities your tours have to taste these items, and what you hope people will learn from it as they're learning about wine and cheese of France?
So if you come to France, you do have to have wine tasting. But instead of doing the typical wine tasting that you could be doing. We take the wine tasting experience, but we put it in a storybook setting by going into a recently reopened castle, which is private. Dates back from the Middle Ages, but it looks like from the Renaissance, with the pink stone and the two-phase stone. We enter the grounds of the castle, and our tables and chairs are ready under a 100-year-old oak tree. So we're in the little town of Celles-sur-Cher, which is the name of the castle, and we have the winemaker, Nicolas, who's here to introduce us to some of his wines. And we get to taste some wines which are not known in the US, such as coming from the grapes of Gamay. And to pair, we pair cheese with wine. So the cheesemonger, Monsieur Jacquin, is also here, and he looks very French, and he does not speak a word of English, but he can tell us everything about cheese. And we get to taste different types of goat cheese, because in the Loire Valley, where this castle is, goats are grown there, are raised there, and that's why you get only goat cheese in the Loire Valley. And one of those cheese is called Celles-sur-Cher, and it can only be made from the milk from those goats that are raised here. And it's done also with some local bread from the bakeries. We have a great time, and once you're done with the wine and cheese tasting, you get to feel that you own the castle and wander in this castle, which is just for us over lunchtime.
Sounds very romantic. How wonderful. Well, let me introduce Patrick Vidal. Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Bonjour.
Now please tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you from and which tours you lead?
Well, telling you where I'm from, I always find it difficult to answer this question because my family is from the southwest of France, next to the Spanish border, from the Pyrenees Mountains. I was born and raised in the north, next to the Belgian border. I did my studies next to the German border. I then started to work on seasons in the Alps, next to the Swiss and Italian border. And now I live in Brittany, the place where Virginie is coming from. So I've been. I can consider myself local everywhere on the tour, and I lead a little bit of all the tours. I do a little bit of the Paris tour, of the Riviera, French Riviera tour, the Loire to the south tour, the eastern part of France tour, and the heart of France, the same one that Virginie was talking about here.
Well, hearing about your background, can you give us, paint a little picture of all of the diversity you find in France, especially when you hug these borders?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, France is, there's no such thing as France, in fact. When you dig a little bit, it's very difficult to define what is French food or what is French culture, because it's so different from one place to another one. Brittany, where we live or we come from, is completely Celtic. You play bagpipe and you play the same kind of music, or same kind of culture you're gonna have in Ireland or in Scotland. You go to Alsace, which is on the eastern part next to the German border, and you're gonna have a language which is much closer to German, with a culture which is much more Germanic, very, very different from the rest of France. If where I was born next to the Belgian border, the culture is Flemish, and it's a different way of living. And the food is not as important up there. It's more the coffee is a huge thing. You go to the south next to the Italian border. Nice has been French only for 150 years. So the Italian feeling is enormous down there. So any regions of France is very, very different. Background, history, architecture, language, and so on.
There are many Frances.
There are many Frances, exactly.
Well, France is of course rich in art and history, but it's also a fascinating place from a political and social perspective. Do you take time to delve into contemporary issues with your groups?
Yeah, we find it as a very, very important part of our tours. History is very good. History is very interesting, but if you don't link it to what the country is nowadays, you don't understand what's going on, and it's very important. So what I'm doing is that on long bus ride, I take the time to do what I call this open microphone for contemporary issue, and I take questions from people talking about, I don't know, the health system, the social security, the school system, the tax system, even if I don't like to talk about taxes too much, but all those everyday things which are making the country as it is nowadays, and which in some ways are also linked with what we're talking about history. It's very easy to link history with nowadays if you talk about the two at the same time. It's very important.
And what tends to surprise your tour members most about contemporary issues?
I think the first one is when I start with education and I tell them that education is free. I mean, you can become a doctor, you can become an architect, a lawyer without paying a school fee. So it's very, very different from your system, and it creates an approach to education. And the simple thing is that I don't have to save money for my kids to go to school. Basically, that's the big thing, and they won't come out of school with a loan for the rest of their life.
Right. Seems really important. So, you know, Americans have so many stereotypes about France and French people. Are there any you would like to end here and now?
Well, I could start with the basic ones. I mean, the French are always seen like wearing a beret, and but the beret is not French. It's Basque. It's from the Spanish border. 95% of the French people have never seen a beret in their life, so that doesn't start too good there. The garlic. I mean, we're always seen as garlic eaters, and in fact, it's very well. First of all, in medieval time, everywhere in Europe, garlic was a very important thing because it was a medicinal thing, but it's also a very important part of the alimentation all along the Mediterranean Sea. So it's not only French, it's Spanish, it's Italian, it's Greek, it's very big all around the place. And maybe one of the big one as well, la baguette. You know, this loaf of bread that the French are walking with under their arm in the street.
True.
And in fact, it's a very recent part of France. It's a recent addition to France. It's an urban thing. It was much easier in the 1950s, 1960s to get a baguette than the original bread, which was a boule of bread, a round bread. And that's therefore the name of the bakery in French, which is la boulangerie. Which where when you make your bowl of bread and that you can keep for very long because it resists to time a little bit. You buy a bread every week instead of buying every day, and you cook it only once in the week, and it's much easier to deal with.
Okay, wow. Well, I think the one that anyone who goes to France, it'll be easy to see is no longer correct is that French people are rude, but they are some of the most welcoming, kind, glorious people.
That's one of the main comments we've got all the time there. The people coming and saying, "Oh, I've been told the French were arrogant, rude, not very friendly, not very welcoming," and it's almost the opposite. They realize that no, that works very well, and they're very welcoming. They're very happy to see you, and just make the first step towards French people, and you'll get them on. That's fine.
Well, we only have a couple minutes, but I figured I'd ask you both to talk about the variety of places you take your tours, and perhaps a favorite place that turns out to be surprising to people. What should they expect?
I think for me is when they come to Brittany, because obviously that's where I'm from. But I really make an introduction, make a point of telling them it's very, very different. As Patrick said, everywhere in France is different. And they get the Celtic music. They think, oh, this is Ireland. And they get food that is, known everywhere in the world, but started originally in Brittany, the crêpe. And they really get different tradition. So they're really surprised. They do not expect that.
Lovely. And how about you, Patrick?
I think my favorite and most striking one is when we go to the Dordogne and we go into the caves, where we see those drawings or paintings from anything between 35 to 12,000 years old. And walking or as we explained before, getting on a little train, taking you in front, face to face with those paintings or drawings. It's mind-blowing. It's an amazing experience. I mean, again, 35 to 12,000 years old. Nothing else is that old and that impressive to me on our tours.
Well, and the Dordogne in and of itself is just such a beautiful region, so it's a perfect place to stay.
We've got everything down there. We've got the
That's
food.
true.
We've got our only trouble. We've got a lot of Brits. But,
a lot of Brits?
Oh, Brits. Yeah, it's a big place of colonization of the British.
Oh.
It's huge. When you go to the market in Sala, it's a kind of you're elbow to elbows with a lot of English people around the place. But hey, it's a different accent. Doesn't matter.
Right. Well, thank you very much for being here
Merci.
with us.
Thank you, Ashley.
I appreciate it. So next we're off to southern Italy with Heidi Van Soel. Thank you so much for being here.